This is the DLR Cast, the essential podcast for fans of Diamond David Lee Roth. All right, folks, welcome back once again to the only podcast by and for fans of Diamond David Lee Roth. You've got the DLR Cast. As always, I'm Steve, no relation to David Lee Roth, along with my good friend, pal, co-podcaster, the effervescent, the unbelievable, the always fun and great to talk to, Darren Paltrowitz. Darren, what's happening, my friend?
This is the first episode where you made the disclaimer outright that you're not related to David Lee Roth. Did you get cease and desisted since the last episode?
No, you know what? I think I probably did a long time ago, back in the very halcyonic, embryonic days of this podcast. Because, I mean, how could I not play up the fact that we do share a last name and quite possibly maybe a relation or two to one Uncle Manny, but that's in New York City. But that's a whole other conversation that I've yet to really go down that rabbit hole of
Sure.
Ancestry.com and other places. But having said that, I mean, come on, if you're new to this, you're like, hey, that guy has the same last name. And so I got to put that disclaimer out there. And, you know, I like a good play on words. So
I thought that was kind of like, that father and son that called themselves the Costco guys that rate the chocolate chunk cookies and really annoy everyone on the internet. And the first bunch of videos, they were calling themselves the Costco guys, but all of a sudden they stopped calling themselves the Costco guys. And you go, did they get cease and desisted? Because I think they did.
Probably. The big box warehouse club does not have the same ring, does it?
No, but anyway, it's great to connect. And it's one of those things where had we said 4 days ago, let's tape a new episode, we would have been scrounging and going like, okay, so there's a balance, maybe reissue, maybe, but it's just one of those things where accidentally Dave has a lot of news, you know?
Right. There are some things in the crazy, weird counter-rotational world of David Lee Roth. And let's start off with the fact that he's added another date to what's shaping up to be a U.S. tour of all of, well, 2 dates. So we start, of course, as we know, we've got the M3 date on May 3rd, which was a couple months back. It was announced that he's doing the M3 Rock Festival on May 3rd. And so the shoes are back, or he was throwing in the shoes. So now the shoes are back, I guess. And now we have a second date, September 12th, the day after my birthday, I might add, at, forgive me, is it Mountain Winery or City Winery out in Saratoga, California?
Mountain Winery. And I think there's a backstory to this Mountain Winery thing that the public is not acknowledging. And I've got a theory right here. No one knew about this Mountain Winery show until Dave White did that tweet where he did you catch that tweet? Because
no.
Okay, so
maybe some other people haven't, so fill everybody in.
Dave White, who we've talked about on a lot of podcasts, he's been in the chat for a couple of the episodes here. Anytime there's a thing about Randy Rhoads and proving what a hypocrite Sharon Osbourne is, allegedly, Dave White might be behind that. Or if there's a Neil Schon from Journey thing, Dave White helps expose that. So Dave White put out a tweet that they just announced the schedule of Mountain Winery because that's close to where he grew up and he's on the mailing list and all that. And he went something like, good to see that there's a Dave date on this. Very cool. It's close to where I grew up. And nobody knew about that. And I have a little bit more to add about that whole thing.
Well, hold on one second. So Mountain Winery announces their summer concert season. Is that it? I saw a bunch of, is this part of a bigger overall announcement, correct?
It was a seasonal announcement. Presumably the weather's not beautiful year round in that part of California. So the warm weather concerts happen during the warmer months of the year at their beautiful amphitheater. And there's no metal. There's not really any hip hop. It's more a mix of stuff that you'd see at your normal summer shed kind of thing. Singer-songwriter.
Yeah.
Great roster. So Dave is on there, and the photo, that's the Vegas residency photo that they're also using for M3. So nobody picked up on that. And
so it's let me just go back, and I don't mean to reiterate this again. Nobody ever anywhere picks up the fact that Dave has added a second date. The second one since 2020, 5 years ago. The first one is M3, and we had speculated maybe there was going to be some more dates in the summer, but is it getting a little bit late to start announcing this if you're going to do a whole tour because most of the sheds and fairs and things are booked already? As far as places that Dave would probably play, at least, or maybe there's an add-on, a buy-in, a fly-in to different festivals, whatever that may be. And so logically, M3 makes sense. We've got nothing after M3. And then all of a sudden, amidst the whole slew of seasonal dates, and we're talking Diana Krall to Lyle Lovett to, Los Lonely Boys, Smokey Robinson. Can you tell I'm going through the website right now? If you're around
Yeah.
August 12th, go see Buddy Guy. Blues Traveler on the 19th. We can go a little bit further down, and right on the September 10th, you can see Jackson Brown. And it says this event is selling fast with a little flame on it under that. September 12th, without this event is selling fast, little icon on it. David Lee Roth, followed by September 13th, Three Dog Night and Little River Band. So nothing, no announcement from Dave, or no singular announcement from Dave, just this overall big, here's what's happening 2025 concert series at the Mountain Winery.
Well, so one of the exclusives, or the things that I have that other people don't have, is I saw that announcement because of Dave White's tweet, and I went, "Oh, awesome!" And I think I might have retweeted it on X, that kind of a thing. And then I reached out to one of my people who would be in the Dave touring party, and I went, "Hey, September 12th, huh?" And the person writes back and goes, "What are you talking about?" And I said, the person goes,
so fucked up.
"Is that a tour date?" And I said, "Yes." And they go, "Didn't know." So,
okay, hold on one second. Remember last episode, you told a story about a certain band member that didn't know, that was flown out somewhere only to find out that he wasn't playing, or didn't think he was playing a certain gig and then was flown out to play that gig. I mean, to say it was last, does that ring a bell? Do you remember you were telling that story about this?
that could match a few different things.
Okay.
I've heard of somebody being either at the airport or en route to the airport and then being told, "No, you don't need to get on the plane. It's canceled." I've heard that stuff. I've heard a story or two about a band member not knowing he was about to be fired, and they were auditioning another band member over over an iPad or a tablet or something like that. And unfortunately, that audition did not go well, and they didn't go with that person who was going to play that night at an arena.
So what you're saying is basically the story you were just alluding to about this Mountain Winery date is par for the proverbial course.
It is weirdly par for the course that we, the super fans, sometimes know more than people working for David Lee Roth about that kind of stuff. I mean, I know Guns N' Roses operates on a similar level where they go, "By the way, we're playing in Dubai in 10 days." And you go, "I got a tour." And they go, "Well, you're in Guns N' Roses, you're canceling those tour dates, and you're going to be in Dubai." That's how Guns N' Roses operates. And I can
But certainly three of those people, namely Duff, Slash, and Axl, aren't getting 10 days notice. It's everybody else who may be.
I would agree, unless it was the kind of thing where a headliner canceled and they put them in the last second.
Sure.
But I don't think that is happening. I think Axl Rose kind of goes, "This is what I want." And people go, "Okay, Axl." Now, Dave is not operating at that level. So the fact that people in the touring party did not know about this Mountain Winery show tells me a few things. First, it tells me, because I asked that person, I said, "So what's the deal with this?" And they said, "Well, we heard that there might be some shows in the fall, but I guess there are." So I guess that person had to then go, "I guess I have to clear my availabilities with other potential employers for the near future." So that's going on. But where this takes my mind as a quasi music professional, and something that you alluded to before, is M3 is what you would call an anchor date. You get the offer to do an M3, and then you build dates around that if you want to be really profitable, because you're flying your crew out, you're flying your equipment out, etc. Mountain Winery is not an anchor date. Mountain Winery is, okay, we're here on a Friday, so we're there on a Saturday and there on a Sunday. Or it's in the middle of a run. You get what I'm saying? Mountain Winery is not a one-off kind of venue when you look at that tour routing.
Unless it is.
No, no chance. Okay, what town is Mountain Winery in?
Well, Mountain Winery is in Silicon Valley, so it's not too close. It's basically close to San Jose and San Francisco. So, which
Okay.
when I look at the full slate of tour dates, I mean, this is not a state fair. This is not some fly by night thing. There's some great acts coming to this. I mean, you got
Yes.
311, Buddy Guy, a bunch of comedians, Lyle Lovett. I mean, 38 specialists. You've got some quote unquote, for the lack of a better term, has-beens to some bigger name folks to folks that do this circuit, these shed
Sure.
circuits all the time, like a Jackson Brown. And I mean, it's just a little bit southwest of San Jose. It's in Silicon Valley. So I mean, if you're gonna do it, I guess if the offer's right and it's a short hop from LA, and in particular where the way I think where Dave is going now, where he has been going for a while, it's hired hands and it's a greatest hits show. And that's it.
I
This is
agree.
this is a public corporate gig, is what we're seeing here.
Oh, we're gonna have to talk about corporate gig stuff in
But do you
this
get what I'm
episode.
saying?
But my hunch is that I don't know what day of the week this is. Is this a Friday or Saturday?
Should look. I'm not even sure, but but it could be a weekend, I bet.
Yeah, so let's say this is the Saturday. Friday night, you go, what casino is 150 miles from here? Because that's where he's probably going to be.
And these are that's a good idea. So here, these actually, let me just go back here. September 12th is a Friday night. So where might he be on Saturday the 13th?
I don't know my Northern California casinos, but the reason I say that this is not a one-off thing is Dave doesn't live in that area. None of the band members live in that area. I don't know about everyone in the crew. I don't know if the crew's changed. The manager doesn't live in that area.
So
Nobody.
your speculation is that there could be some more dates around this in the fall.
My speculation without trying to confirm is yes, and this date was not supposed to be announced.
Hmm.
That the
So,
ball was dropped, and otherwise, because Dave's team
well,
is not promoting it the way that he hasn't done any interviews to promote M3, but he did do that special audio thing with all the rhymes, like the
right,
party and the bounce and the house and the party. Like he did
right,
one of
and
those
yeah,
things.
and he did, supply at least some sort of press photo.
Right. So what can we learn from this? It's bonkers that Team Dave does not tell the rest of Team Dave when we need you. We want you to rehearse 70 times. I've heard that there are rehearsals going on. I don't know if it's 70 rehearsals for M3. I've heard that there are rehearsals happening. In other words, the band is not just getting up on stage for the first time since rehearsing for Vegas. There are rehearsals happening. I don't know if the block is 70. But to do all that rehearsal work, I said there's no chance he's going to put out all this expense for M3 and it's just a one-off.
Right.
There,
And to be clear, I mean, I didn't think they weren't going to ever not rehearse. I mean, this far in advance, I guess I'm a little surprised. I mean, these guys are such pros. If it's the same guys we're talking about and have played with Dave enough times, you can convene them 2 weeks ahead of time and knock off your block.
I entirely agree with that. But when you said corporate gigs,
No,
unless
well,
you had
what I
more to
mean,
add,
what I mean is this gig, and I'm happy to be proven wrong if there's more dates on top of that, or
yeah.
maybe all. I guess basically what I'm saying is that these are the equivalent of public corporate gigs. Fly in, fly out. I don't think he can do a bigger like 20 date tour. I think these are weekends, like so many. This is how these veteran acts roll nowadays. They're
Yeah.
not on the bus. They're in and out. It's a fly-in date. The back line is already there. And if a musician can't show up, you have another guitar player pop in its place. No knock to Alistrada or anybody else, but
Mhm.
there's somebody else on standby. If a drummer can't do September 12th, well, there's enough time now to get somebody else doing this. I mean, do you get what I'm saying? This is not going to be a string of a bunch of dates. If he plays, if we see dates in the middle of a Wednesday night and God knows where in East Yahuppetsville, then I'll say, yeah, then it's a tour. But this is, I think, his touring MO right now. It's not difficult. It's weekends, and that's when these places are going to draw the best anyway, versus a tour day, especially in this, especially in, I was going to say, especially in the summer or
Right.
tail end of summer in nice climates, right? I mean, it's about these sorts of, this could easily been another state fair gig, if not a festival, but it just happens to be a shed. And that's where it gets interesting is that these shed schedules have been locked for ages.
I agree with that. If you go back to the early 2000s, when he was kind of at the theater level, he there were a lot of Friday, Saturday only weekends. And
Right.
I think even during the K-Rock era, I remember there was a Friday or Saturday kind of thing as well. So that's something new. Then again, the Kiss tour right before the pandemic, that was not a Friday, Saturday
Right. That
thing.
was an actual tour. Those guys were playing Tuesday night, Thursday night, whatever it might be, 3 or 4 nights a week with a couple of days off, a day or two off between gigs.
Right. So I believe that more shows have been booked, but the needed parties haven't been told that they're booked. Do you follow
Right.
what I'm saying?
Well, it'll be interesting to see if we see anything else in the summertime.
Okay, so when I said before about the corporate gigs, do you
Sure.
remember like 3 weeks or so ago when Sebastian Bach posted the photo on
Yes.
Facebook and he
Right.
said a
That was
couple of,
after our last episode. Was that after our last episode, maybe? And I don't remember us talking about it, but forgive me if we were. But I do remember, I think
yeah,
you and I were trading texts about that. You were sending me some screenshots and right.
I solved that mystery. I don't think I went public with it
All right. Well,
about where that gig was and what that gig was.
okay. That was a
And
corporate gig.
it was well, sort of. Do you want me
Uh,
to tell you how I figured it out
yes,
or
because hearing how the sausage was made is always as interesting as the sausage with you.
I I'm not claiming that I'm a genius or anything like that. This is just stuff that I learned from being an investigator. And the what happened was Sebastian Bach posted the photo of him and Dave and Tone Loc backstage somewhere, and it looked like a basketball locker room, and it said something along the lines of, a couple of weeks ago I had the honor of being with one of my heroes, and he signed this stuff, and he was so cool, one of those kinds of things. And you go, okay, Sebastian Bach and Dave. So if you looked on social media, total dead end because they would have known to scrub themselves from Instagram posts. However, our friend Tone Loc did not scrub himself or untag himself from all social media. So when fans met
Well,
Tone Loc in the lobby of a hotel on a particular date, and that same particular date, Dee Snider was at that hotel, but fairly scrubbed. And Lita Ford was at that hotel and fairly scrubbed. And, and you look through this whole thing, you go, okay, this was a Royal Machines gig. And
of course.
it looks to have been in Orlando, Florida at the Hard Rock Hotel. I think I have it as February 21st. I'd have to check my notes. But I then went on a jump further and further and further. And then also kind of leaking the whereabouts of the whole thing was Billy Idol's no, Billy Idol's keyboard player, Paul, who did not untag himself from stuff. So he was backstage or I think he was in a limo, him and Tone Loc. And you're going, under what circumstances would Tone Loc and Billy Idol's band be hanging out? Well, Billy Idol's guitar player Steve Stevens is in the Royal Machines.
Right.
And then Billy Idol has also come out for some of the Royal Machine shows. So taking a step further, there's been more Royal Machines shows with Dave than we know about.
Hmm.
There was one at the Venetian in 2023. In other words, this whole time that he was doing this I'm retired charade, he was not retired.
And it really flies under the warehouse, where the radar, I should say, warehouse. Because the
Yep.
last time you see anything about Royal Machines that I recall, this going out everywhere, there was he performed, at least in the public news sphere, was back in 2023 when they performed in Las Vegas. But there's been other dates, and what you're saying was 3 weeks ago. So 3 weeks ago, this thing with the photo with Tone Loc and Sebastian Bach went around about 3 weeks ago, went
Yeah.
around the interwebs. And that was post a Royal Machines show somewhere. You said, where did you say it was? In
I
Orlando?
believe it was Orlando at the Hard Rock Casino or something like that. Allegedly. We'll keep saying allegedly so we don't get incriminated. But long story short, every one of these Dave shows that I'm finding that Machines had him at, it's the same three songs. It's Jump, Panama, You Really Got Me. And the set list of the show, some of the people on these shows, you and I would never expect them to be doing this. Like, for example, Dexter Holland from The Offspring is on a lot of these.
Okay.
Shirley Manson from Garbage is on a lot of these. I wouldn't have pegged Shirley
There's a
Manson
slew
for.
of people. I know Josh Freese has played with him, Chris Chaney, Robin Zander, Steve Stevens. It's interesting too because there is a Royal Machines website and there is Royal Machines social media, which hasn't been updated since 2021.
It's one of those like under the
Dave
radar.
Navarro was a regular guy for a while. Donovan Leitch,
Yeah,
what's his name? The guy who's done some tracks with Ozzy.
Billy Morrison.
Billy Morrison. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Mark McGrath is another one. It's an all-star group, and they all sing two or three of their respective groups' hits, and right, and that's kind of the deal, right?
a lot of them have DMC on them, and it's tough to read, but I think it was that Mark McGrath then comes out, or D. Snyder comes out and does Walk This Way with DMC, or It's Tricky, or something like that. It seems like it's a fun show to see as a
Sure.
fan. You don't hear any songs that you haven't heard 1,500 times before, unless it's one of the weird David Bowie covers that Shirley Manson does.
But it
Whatever it
is really
is.
cool to hear different people doing other songs they don't normally do. Frankly, I would dig a show like this if I ever worked for a company that could afford to hire them.
Yeah, so far we know Home Depot did one of the Dave ones. Intel did one of the
And
Dave
I think they
ones.
also get hired for charitable gigs too, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
And I've been asking around, and this stuff, you and I have talked on the DLR cast about corporate gigs and private gigs. And I think that this is a lot more common than the general average person realizes. I was talking with my brother-in-law, and he's talking about how Jim Gaffigan gave a pep talk speech on one of their holiday calls. And I know a friend, Weezer played their holiday party. I think that was an Amazon thing, etc. MTV, I saw a bunch of those all the time. But it's always surprised me that it's Dave doing them, because if we rewind back to the pandemic, Dave was thrown in the shoes. He was retiring. And since then, he played that Cabo party alongside Cardi B and Coolio that we're not supposed to know about because every attendee signed an NDA. And that person whose birthday was is now in the Trump administration overseeing crypto. Side story for that. But there's that,
What
and there's Royal Machines gigs.
I'll tell you
And
what I find fascinating about all this is that knowing that we know Dave doesn't always play well with others with big names is the fact that he apparently plays well enough to be in Royal Machines gigs.
well, there's that. And then 2017 or 2018, you could still find it buried on YouTube. That Beach Boys private show in an LA hotel when he comes on and does California Girls. And then there's been some galas where it's part of the Jimmy Kimmel band backing him. He does these things probably because it's show up, sing the song you've sung a trillion times, get out of there with your check unless you got paid
No
up front.
pressure. It's an easy gig. Maybe you do three, four tracks tops.
Yeah.
And you get they're picking you up, they're taking you to the airport, they're getting you on a flight, they're getting you out of there. I mean, does he go with Tom or another assistant? And maybe he's out of there the same night or stays somewhere, or who the hell knows?
I believe he is generally out of there, but except
Probably.
these Vegas ones, he seems to hang around. But either way, I almost go. So he's got to do this M3 gig where he actually has to have the band rehearsed and have all these expenses and have to deal with the scrutiny of people like us and whether he looks good and the people filming him,
And by the
or
way,
he could
do a
just do
75-minute gig.
or he could just do these. I'm going to sing these three songs. No one can take video of it without getting in trouble and under
Well,
the radar and get paid a lot more.
okay, so what's your
Why?
motivation? Maybe, right? You're asking why. Maybe the why is he really wants to get out there and just sing and he thinks he can still do it. And maybe we're all look, the bar, we said this before. The bar is pretty damn low. And as low as the bar is, he could sound circa 1979, and 63.5% of the fans are going to bitch and moan and say that he still sucks and he can't sing worse shit. You know that. And that's one of the things that always ticks me off is that he's almost damned if you do, damned if you don't. And that's by his own volition, quite frankly, because he's not done enough wackadoodle shit to make you go, what the fuck, Dave?
So that's another thing that's been coming up for me. I've been noticing people who love Dave but have no clue about any of the recent happenings. Like I'll give you an example. There's this podcast I discovered a couple days ago. The gentleman who runs the David Lee Roth news desk goes, "Hey, check out this new podcast, Guckcast, Guhcast, Guckcast." And episode 1, it's called David Lee Roth. And it's two guys talking about all the stuff from childhood to forward about what they think about David Lee Roth. And they're listening to songs from the John 5 sessions and not realizing that John 5 is on them. But a couple minutes before that, they were talking about the DLR band. They're going, John 5 sounds good on this. I wonder who this band is that he's playing with. And it's not their fault. It's just they're not so deep into this. And there was another guy who posted a great interview with Ricky Rocket. I think his name is the hair metal guru. Great Ricky Rocket interview from a week or two ago. And he posted a review of the David Lee Roth song Alligator Pants a couple days ago. And he goes, here's my review of the new David Lee Roth single Alligator Pants. That's not a new single. That's 15 years old now. Because that's from the John 5 sessions.
Right. And that's a good segue into that song if you want to.
Well, just adding one more of these,
Sure.
my father, who's a CNBC loyalist, is watching, and he said that the host of Fast Money, Joseph, I forget his last name. I'm going to reach out to him on Twitter. He made some remark about how David Lee Roth announced that he was no longer retired. And you go, if you were following this stuff, you would know he never retired. So there's so much misinformation because of his terrible PR strategy. But back to you in the alligator pants.
Well, it's a good segue, but I was gonna say one more thing about Royal Machines, and that is,
Sure.
you're dealing with multiple people's schedules, and obviously they have a formula that works, but
Right.
that's a sort of thing where they could seriously all clean up on a very short public tour and doing say about 10 shed dates in major markets. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a greatest hits cover thing. Sure. Call it something else if you want, with
Mm-hmm.
special surprise guests. You got a core group with a couple people that are going to be there every night. Maybe it's Dee Snider, maybe it's Joe Perry, maybe whoever it is, right? Kind of the core folks, Steve
Yeah.
Stevens, with special guests. And that's what's bringing some people in, because fuck, who's going to show up? Is it Dave? Is it Brian Johnson? I don't know. I'm just ripping here outside of Dave, but you know what I mean? I mean, it's a pretty successful formula in that they're getting six figures to do corporate gigs and charitable work and stuff like that. But man, that could do some serious business, say a winter casino tour or something where you're pulling in 8 to 10,000 people. Easy.
Casinos, yes, but let me give you an example of when that failed. I saw this gig, probably 2017, of Kings of Chaos. That's Matt Sorum's group.
Right.
So the lineup
Right.
was Matt Sorum. On bass is Robert DeLeo from Stone Temple Pilots. On guitar, switching off, you had Billy Duffy from The Cult, Billy Gibbons, uh, one other guitar player whose name is slipping my mind right now. Switching off on lead vocals, you had Robin Zander, Chester Bennington from Linkin Park.
Yeah, I
Might have
remember
been
that.
one other singer, and it did not sell out Irving Plaza, which holds 1,600 people. And
Well,
Matt
all right.
Sorum
I
did
stand
advance
I stand
press.
corrected. Of course, 2018 was a long time ago, but I mean, I just wonder because so many of these guys you're not going to see anywhere else now.
I agree. I love this kind of stuff when it's promoted right. It's just an amazing time to see big stars playing smaller places, playing the hits, having a good time, and it kind of sells itself if it's promoted correctly. I've no idea why Chester Bennington and all that couldn't sell 1,500 tickets in New York City. Weird stuff happens, but in the case of Dave, that might that might be the perfect no pressure thing for him where he kind of shines. And Going back though, Alligator Pants though, is that a track that you do like? Because I mean,
Okay.
Somewhere Over the Rainbow Bar and Grill, that's in my opinion the best from that batch.
Yeah. So a couple things with Alligator Pants. One, I got 20 seconds into it and went, well, this is clearly from the John 5 sessions, correct?
Yes.
And and then of course to which I immediately got ticked off because so far we've only since and I even commented on the YouTube page about it. And
Right.
so far we only have it on YouTube. It's not in any of the streaming services. It came out a week ago. The other six or so tracks or whatever. I mean, we've talked about it before, and I don't remember the exact number, but we're almost at a full album, man. As far as all those songs and those sessions that were released that John Five talked about how great it is 10 years ago. So this song comes out. It sounds just like it. Let's all assume it's from those sessions. And it's just out there. 2 weeks after the Alligator Pants spoken word demo came out, whatever the hell that was,
Yeah.
right? And this comes out and I really liked it. But again, what's the rhyme? There's no rhyme, no reason, no point to it. Just out there. At least it was almost a bit of a plan with the other John 5 tracks going on, what now, 2 years ago, where they're
Yeah.
on YouTube, they're on Spotify. You can add them to playlists. They're at Amazon Music. They're everywhere. This is just this with a static shot and a
Yeah.
video. And it's what the hell are you doing, man? Put out all the songs with John Five, for God's sakes. Why this now and why nowhere else?
And John Five, we can argue, is the most famous he's ever been from joining Motley Crue.
Sure.
And did you see the John Five tour that he's currently offering?
No, but I saw him on tour a couple of years ago and he was amazing, man. Oh,
Oh,
before
yes.
he's touring on one of the solo records, which I absolutely love.
Creatures or whatever it was. But
Yeah.
no, this is not that. John Five is putting his Kiss memorabilia collection on display for a maximum of 6 people to see per day. You park your car in this specific parking lot, then a van or whatever picks you up, takes you to this location, and gives you a guided tour with no phones. And I think it's 500 or $600 per person to watch him talk about his Kiss
Did
memorabilia
he get
collection.
this idea from Gene Simmons or something? I mean, this is almost kind of like the Gene Simmons box set extravaganza thing where for
The
10
vault,
grand,
if I
the
can
vault,
correct you,
yeah.
the Gene Simmons vault.com.
On a side note, I've been trying to figure this out, but Gene Simmons had a US tour booked and now apparently it's all canceled.
I don't think the whole thing's canceled. I think
Well,
they
there's
canceled.
back and forth. There's some dates that are canceled. I've been following some writers and they're like, it's canceled. No, it's not. Just these dates are canceled. And these dates, and of course the ticket prices were insane, I guess, which may be one reason why some of them are canceled because they're not
Initially.
selling.
So this is something I've been tracking heavily. So
Oh,
part of
good.
my enthusiasm to talk about all things Gene Simmons all the time here. So at first I thought all the dates were canceled. Then it looked like it was something like 17 out of 26. And I don't know if the New York, New Jersey dates got canceled, but within 48 hours of them announcing that those shows were quote unquote postponed, not canceled, postponed,
Right.
which means you can hold on to the deposits and all that kind of stuff. They then announced the Kiss concert that they were doing in Vegas.
In Vegas, right. So maybe it was a scheduling thing, right? I mean, that show was just a one-off, right?
Allegedly.
And well, I am fine with them playing. I'll tell you why. It's not,
Yeah.
they never said they weren't going to ever not play again. They said the touring is done. And this show in Vegas is with no makeup,
Yeah.
which is cool. Bruce Kulick is a guest, which is
Yeah.
awesome. And is it for the 50th anniversary or something? And I'm not, I don't know the whole, I saw it out there. I've been meaning to click on a couple things. I saw it in my social media feeds, but I mean, this is not like a charity gig or something. This has something to do with Kiss World in general, I think.
That's from what I understand, that
Yeah.
it's days of events, that it sounds like it's the Kiss cruise, but not in the water. It's the Kiss cruise, but not on a boat.
Good analogy. That's right. Yeah.
That's how I take it. And they're trying to give people a rare experience. But the problem with them doing this is that Paul Stanley was going, this is the end of the band because we want to leave on a high note. That's to me what the problem was. You go, oh, so this is a high note, whoring yourself out for a Vegas convention. I have no problem with Kiss doing Kiss conventions. I would have no problem with them doing it under a different name than Kiss. So it's if
I'm fine with it so long as they're not touring. They said they're not touring.
yeah.
Don't put the makeup on. I mean, they were staggering to the end zone at the end of that tour. I mean, let's just, for all intents and purposes, it was a fairly decent high note the way it ended in
Yeah.
Madison Square Garden, the crazy amount of promotion around it and everything. So a gig or two, fine. I'll give them that. I mean, I would go see Gene Simmons
Yeah.
live. I mean, the set
Um
lists look great. He sounds good. Uh, I mean, comparatively, I saw somebody sent me a link to some recent Ace Frehley uh, show, and let's just leave that right there.
okay, so do you notice the parallels between Dave Van, if we were doing an SAT question, what's the thing? This is this and this is to this and this. Okay, so if you go like David Lee Roth is to Van Halen as Gene Simmons is to Kiss, and you go David Lee Roth when he was doing his Vegas residency was playing the House of Blues, and some people tell you, oh man, that holds 2,800 people. And then there's other people go, no, they could scale to 600 people if they want to. They could block out sections. They could take away the
Right.
seats, put in the seats. And Van Halen on all the dates with Van Halen, with whether it's Dave or Sammy, is doing arenas. So it turns Dave down to a club thing. You look at Kiss, Kiss had its very lean years, but Kiss refused, other than specialty kinds of things, to do anything smaller than an arena. And then here comes Gene Simmons with his solo tour. He's down to clubs and small theaters.
Right.
Where he was playing here on Long Island, the Paramount, they say it holds 2,000 people. It's really like a 14-ish hundred. He was going to play that theater in Red Bank, New Jersey, Count Basie. That's like another under 2,000.
Sure.
Then he was also going to play the Wellmont, which is right outside of the city. He was doing 3 gigs within 25 miles of each other, which were not selling. That were all 2,000 or less cap rooms.
Right.
But this is a guy who played the Garden with his big band. So you have that whole thing where the sum of the parts is much greater than the parts individually. And at the same time, Dave, then 2021, those Vegas gigs are the last gigs he's ever gonna do. And then a couple of years later, that never happened.
Yeah. I still say you just reminded me of something we talked about previously. And I still say, especially given the last 3, 4 years coming out of COVID, the idea of a Vegas residency, Dave was ahead of his time the first time he tried doing it in 96.
Totally.
And he's the perfect act for it if it's going to be the right kind of review, REVUE, and show, where it's kind of a
Yes.
whole, it's really something that'll challenge him and have fun. He's not just doing the hits, where we've talked about this before. Bring in some horns for a couple songs, do some deeper B cuts, do a 3 or 4 song medley of covers with Just a Gigolo and some other stuff. Knock out some killer Van Halen. You've got a crackerjack band that could do all that stuff, and make it a good 120-minute show with some discipline and with a a break in between, an hour into it, right? So, I mean, it could, and do that twice a year. And he could have been cleaning up all these years and really reburnishing his image, I think.
Absolutely. And Hagar is doing a Vegas residency, of course, with Michael Anthony Toe. I don't know if that's the Park MGM. It's one of the newer spaces, but it's, if Sammy can do it, generally Dave can do it too when it comes to business or draw. Even if it's a different fan base, it's a comparably sized fan base
So,
when marketed correctly.
completely switching gears here for a minute, the Gene Simmons thing reminded me of something that I saw that I had an idea. So, for about 13 grand or so, you could be a roadie for the day. Or I guess,
Yes.
did you see Gene's promotion, right? The ultimate Gene Simmons thing,
Be
the
his
experience.
assistant for a
Right.
day. I think it was
So
12.5.
or a roadie for a day or something like that. And
Yeah.
and he'll join you for a meal and you're a roadie and all that. Well, what if for about 2,200 bucks, you can go for a bike ride with Dave through the LA River Basin, and that's basically about it, and hope he shows up.
Oh man.
Dave leads a bike tour of the LA River Basin, 2,200 bucks. You get it on video. Tom's taping it all. I mean, come on, folks. Let's throw this around the room here.
I think that, you know, you're right about that. I think there's a number of things that Dave could do if he was more user friendly and
Like basic
clean
meet and
up.
greets, VIP experiences, which Van Halen never did. I mean, they were never the able to do that
100%.
stuff. Yeah.
If it was a room that was curated around Dave and his history, and you put the outfits and you had videos playing, and it was Club Dave, as he calls it, and all he did was he walked in for about 8 minutes and he just acted like Dave. He would kill it to kiss proportions.
And roughly 8 to 10 minutes is all the attention span and the patience would allow him to do.
He would make more money from that than he would from these Royal Machines gigs. And I think that's a lost cause, unfortunately. I think the merchandise game, if he did, you know how they sell those t-shirts that look like a tuxedo, but you're wearing a t-shirt?
Is that those are from the same folks who have those t-shirts that make you look like you got a six-pack abs?
Yeah, exactly. If you did those for famous Dave outfits or the assless chaps, but it was just jeans, that kind of stuff, beautiful. But instead, we get a box set that he doesn't promote that has no new stuff. There's no membership or subscription things. There's no fan club. There's no meet and greet. I will be shocked if at M3 that there are t-shirts. I would be shocked.
Do you know how much he could be cleaning up with the Roth show right now? First of all, the Roth show podcast we haven't
Yeah.
mentioned in months because it's gone. Okay, think of this. He's got so much content he puts out there, and and Lord knows, I bet you the wonderful Tom was probably the genesis to keeping that rolling for a long time, the Roth show and the taping and
Sure.
providing some sort of discipline. I keep using that word too much and I apologize. That's the only
Discipline,
word.
zero
Yeah,
discipline.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Is
that's
that
the only
the
word I
Panama
can think
lyric?
of. But
Yeah.
think of this, man. So much of this content, if you just had some sort of like narrative discipline around it, where it could be, we've talked about this before ad nauseum, but also in the podcast world, think of what he can be doing with Patreon memberships.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'll tell you something that I was gonna do.
$30 a month, $50 I mean, Patreon memberships are what, 5, $10 a month? Dave could do $19.99 for goodness sakes and clean up. And that's not lowering the value of him and just go, these are special episodes. And it could be video stuff now too, right? I mean, just it's the idea is just keep presenting themselves to apparently just us.
Not just us, but Mrs. Paltrowitz talked me out of doing something that I was gonna do, anonymously. I can't talk today. And that was I was gonna start a GoFundMe to raise $4 million to get Dave back on the radio and doing his radio show and say of the $4 million, assuming that we could get there, that 2 million was his salary and 1 million was to build the studio and 1 million was for the staffing or something to that effect, so that it would be raised and you'd be like, Dave, you got to do a radio show now. There's the money. Roth Radio is back.
A podcast is just a more direct radio show when you think of it, right? So let's cut that down to an easy 2 million just to get him to do 10 episodes.
Oh no, I was saying he would do like 4 days a week, 3 hours a day, like Stern. Because let's face it, if he did have a therapist, the amount that he's talking at that therapist, he would probably go, so it's a lot easier and cheaper to just talk into this microphone one time than it is to go to therapy or talk to friends and that kind of a thing. So I thought that we could easily raise that money and bring Dave back to the airwaves, whether he's vlogging it or radioing it or podcasting it. Mrs. Paltrowitz talked me out of doing that, so I'm sorry. I thought I would easily, no matter what's going on in the world, that if you would have said, would 200,000 people give $20 for that, I think so. So,
Globally, maybe. Yeah.
so joking aside, you have to look at the Davenomics right there, and you go,
Davenomics. I like that.
so you take an album like 1984 selling over 10 million albums, and obviously there's not 10 million diehard Van Halen fans left, and there's not a million diehard Van Halen fans left. But are there 100,000 diehard Van Halen fans left? I would say there are.
Absolutely.
And let's knock that number down to 20,000. You're like, are there 20,000 people who would pay for a premium Dave experience for anything? I would say absolutely there are. So that's when you go like maybe he doesn't care about the money, or maybe he just doesn't want to spend any time doing anything he doesn't feel he has to do. But if that were the case, he wouldn't be doing these Royal Machines gigs.
Yeah, you just got me thinking too about the podcast. I mean, easily, if there, I mean, wouldn't it have been so cool if there was some podcasts, one or two episodes? Give us just one episode while he was in Thailand a couple months ago,
Yeah, he filmed the whole damn thing.
right? Exactly.
So why do we love Dave? The attitude, the corny jokes, the music,
The
the old,
frustration.
the old music videos. So because we love all that, here's him cycling around Thailand. That doesn't check any boxes whatsoever of why we love David Lee Roth. And this is unfortunately why we had this troll on Twitter who has since deleted her comments. No one responded to her or anything like that, but she said something like you guys are hurting Dave, and he would drop any of you in a fight. And you're like,
What?
when did we say we were gonna fight? I never once said I was going to fight anybody. I don't think I'm at that age where I threaten violence against people, nor do I think Dave threatens violence against people for the most part.
Yeah.
But we say all this because we're disappointed. We know there's so much damn potential.
Yeah.
So
Leaving money on the table.
So speaking of that though, he posted another dance video within the last week, but is it me or is it that same exact dance in the coveralls with just different music put to it?
My comment was something along, what was the name of that song?
The song, or is it your comment? It was the 50 rides on the new sensation. Is
That
what
was
you
it. Yes, because it looked like I knew. See, my hope is that you'll see this, or other listeners will see it, and they'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Because as soon as I saw that, I went, "Yeah, that's 50 rides on the Love Train."
It is, but isn't it literally one dance that they keep swapping out the music to, rather
That's what
than
I'm.
he filmed four different dances?
Well, that's what I'm getting. I mean, that video clearly is a few years old, so that's why
Yeah.
it looked to me that way. That's why I thought it was like, well, I've seen this during the hour-long 50 rides on the Love Train YouTube video, or one of those.
Yeah. So he recycles that. He recycles Alligator Pants, which we still, my estimate is that song is 15 years old. Conservatively, I'm going to say 15, but I think it's more than 15 years old, regardless of how much remixing or adding stuff or that kind of stuff. It's an original tracked recording from 15-ish years ago that he redid. So you go, that dance video is from X number of years ago. Alligator Pants is X number of years ago. There was a while when he was using the No Holds Barbecue is X number of years ago. But
Right.
we know he's drawing every day or
Yeah.
almost every day and
And he has
painting.
put out some recent recently taped from this year, it looks like, dance videos. What was the one where the
Yeah.
mannequins and the video screens, the woman was dancing? Remember, like back in.
Tony Basil was in there for a little bit.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So, and that was clearly new era vintage Dave. The hair is a bit of a giveaway, especially when you look at the recent photo with Sebastian Bach.
Yeah. But I wonder what the strategy, if there is any, behind let's reuse this and then never put any of this out. Because I have the feeling, this I've never verified, this is just me spitballing, but based on what I've heard. I do think he's creating stuff every day. I do think he's regularly hiring out to people to create things every day. But then he kind of goes to a social media person, and that person has changed over time, same with the video editor, and goes, put this out. And you go,
Right.
is it because
And
he doesn't remember the other stuff he's done?
well, and those people who he hires,
Yeah.
what they put out is only as good as the content Dave gives him at that moment. It's
But
not like they've got, I don't think they have creative free reign to go to pull up a bunch of stuff, ton of
no.
stuff from the vault, or have any sort of like strategy and go, well, every Monday we're going to do this and every Wednesday we're going to do this. And because that just has never existed on his channel.
But I don't
The
think
closest thing it did was when there was at least some focus. And I'm not using discipline. There was at least some focus, it seemed like, when he was really getting into the comics and then the arts, when there was regular artwork coming out. And we saw that I mean, those were multiple social media posts for like a month or two, regular, just bam, bam, bam. It was like, okay, well, there's some focus here finally.
So I think that partially has to do with who's on the team at that time and maybe remembers what he's got going on. But I don't think he remembers all the stuff he's making. That's where I'm going with that. I don't
Yeah,
think
and I think also, it's on to the next thing. So what he made last Tuesday is off of his radar because what he made yesterday, he's just digging so much at that moment. And next Thursday, it's something else.
for sure. So I mean that bums me out. But then since we last taped our last episode, they leaked a couple more of those classic Van Halen things that we never ever ever thought that we were going to see to
Right.
YouTube, and hopefully you grab them, or if not, I can send them to you because a lot of people knew like, oh, okay, these are going to go away quickly. I've hoped that more is going to come, but that's what I kind of have to use to remind myself of, okay, this guy may have lost it, but at least we have this documented forever.
I have not looked, but have any of those videos, those Van Halen videos, the outtakes, have any of those been yanked, or are they still up there?
Oh, they're all gone from the original posting. And
From
then
just a month, barely a month ago, the outtakes from Hot for Teacher. I forgot the name of that guy's channel.
James T. Vega or James Vega, something to that effect.
They're
Yeah,
all gone, huh?
they're all gone and then reposted in new forms and then gone and then gone and
Wow.
then
So it's playing
clipped.
whack-a-mole.
Yeah. I mean, there's people like me who I've seen things on the WDFA group where other people have a Google Drive and other people have learned their lesson to just like put them up, share them around, and then they'll never die. And you could always get these things forever.
Hey, speaking of cool video content, we'd be remiss if we did not mention a couple things that our great friend Ramses posted recently at the Mojo Dojo. Just a few
Yeah.
days ago, he did this really cool video. And I would love to talk about how he puts the stuff together, but basically a spoken word jazzy version of the Van Halen song As Is, if you listen to
Yeah.
the lyrics, which is really, really cool. I've been rich and I've been poor, but rich was totally better.
Yeah, which is better, totally better.
And then
It's
about 2 weeks ago, we did the Dave Sickle, which was interesting. And I think it's basically, if I remember correctly, that was something where Ramses was making a piece of cool. There was a video of him making a pretty cool piece of art that you could actually buy. So if I got that right, forgive me
yes.
if I don't.
He has stuff for sale online that you can get through his online store. I think it started with the lithograph kind of prints and then it moved to physical items otherwise, and he's growing it. And then there's these videos. I thought he made a slam dunk video in the past couple of
He
weeks.
did. I pop in there regularly because I'm praying that there's gonna be another cool cover version coming up, like Baker Street or Shine a Little Love or something, where it's just like blasting and
Yeah.
even if it's something I may have heard before, but Lord knows there's a lot of stuff we haven't heard. But also when he does something like Slam Dunk, and did he do something with, well, actually he put up, was it last? I can't remember time frames, but he did put up a whole LA Forum show from the Eat 'em and Smile tour. And I know he does some audio tricks with it to make it sound even better. So
Yeah.
thank you very much, Ramses. You are one of my go-to YouTube bookmarks. So I get the alerts.
He's doing that, and then the David Lee Roth newsdesk.com is
Yeah.
also doing his part. I don't know if we're publicly allowed to know that he's named Dave, or I'm supposed to say it. If I did, sorry for doxing you, but you're doing an incredible job with the artwork and the attitude behind the kind of stuff. And that's what
Well, two
reminds me
well,
of
two
like,
things on that. Two things on that. Not, I mean, one, if you go to the site, davidleerothNewsDesk.com, it jumps out at you. Visually, it's super
yes.
cool. There's always some new stuff there. And then if you look to the left a little bit, what's the second banner you see? The DLR cast. So thank you very much for driving folks our way. We appreciate it, Dave, if indeed that's your name.
Yeah, I believe it is. He's got a very strong game when it comes to the visuals and the programming. And you say there's those two things. Roth Army was a good resource for me when I was writing the book.
Right.
It's an alternately informative and scary toxic message board that happens. Then there's the VH Links one. Then there's the one that Ron and Ron run that you can kind of get as a daily digest. There's all that great stuff, but I still feel like we're not united as a fan base. And I don't know if people are going to M3 since they put the single tickets on sale. It's not like the seating chart went clean. I looked at it and certain rows were gone and then certain rows were full. And if you know your concert ticketing, full rows don't go clean and then untouched. That means they held more tickets.
I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings here, but when I looked at an overall date, I went, okay, there's about six bands here, including Dave, that would make one fantastic Saturday. Do you know what I mean?
For sure. I
Yeah.
I love Ace Frehley,
From the
but
whole show, I'm saying you can compact that down into one. And I'm not even sure if after what I've seen if Ace would be a part of that or not. But
yeah.
I mean, for my own personal taste, and I don't get me wrong, I love Ace, and of course I'd want to see him on that bill regardless. But what I'm saying is there's not a lot for me to go, yeah, as a fan, I need to be there all those days.
Well, fortunately, based on, the accidental announcement of the Mountain Winery gig, I won't be
Right.
surprised if he's coming to you in Minnesota.
Yeah.
I would start looking at, okay, what casinos are there near me? I
Yeah. Well,
wouldn't I wouldn't peg him for the Minnesota State Fair.
no, which is where I saw him on the Minnesota State Fair. Oh my goodness, this would have been like mid to late 90s sometime. And
Sure.
the thing about the Minnesota State Fair is that grandstand there seats about 35,000 when it's completely packed. I have seen some massive shows there, Kid Rock, Def Leppard. I saw Cheap Trick way back when. I
Hmm.
mean, a Jeff Foxworthy will pack it in there. I mean, this is upper Midwest State Fair crowd. The State Fair in
Sure.
Minnesota is one of the biggest in the country. I think it's right up there with like the Texas State Fair.
Yeah.
And New York State up in Syracuse. This thing is massive, man, and it is and the grandstand shows are huge. And I remember Dave saying, and what really stands out for me with that show with Dave was the fact that he was vamping and ripping and having a good time with the sign language interpreter.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was great. It was so cool because he was doing some rap and then he saw the woman and he was just like, the woman who signs all the lyrics. There's somebody there for every show. And I know, and she's house right. And I still remember this. And he was, took a step down and came down and was just kind of rapping with her, made her and her signing part of his stage rap, of which she had to sign it back a little bit. And of course, it did help. She was also pretty attractive, if I recall, too. So, it was a good time. But man,
That's
so he's done the state. I mean, even of course, he's done the state fairs for a while now. But we do have a lot of casinos here that year round. We don't have an amphitheater. We don't have a big shed out here. The closest thing to a shed we have is the Minnesota State Fair, which is only 10 days. So we don't have the
oh,
equivalent of Jones Beach or SPAC up in Saratoga or what used to be Great Woods in Boston or Meriwether Post Pavilion where M3 is, right?
yeah.
We don't have that here. There was a smaller amphitheater where I swear every year it had almost practically the same bill. You saw the Mavericks and then there was Los Lobos and Lyle
Hmm.
Lovett, it's like a 2,000 seat tiny amphitheater at the Minnesota Zoo, but nothing like we don't have like kind of the type of place that's on the quote unquote shed circuit. But we do have a lot of casinos in places that are way far out in Minnesota where you go, huh, I really want to see them, but that's a 5 hour drive
It's by the lake house.
somewhere.
Yeah, repeating myself here, I think more shows are going to come. I don't think it's going to necessarily be the biggest markets. I think they're going to be big cash gigs, but at the same time, the success of this I almost said MP3, the success of this M3 show, I do think will dictate whether this is one of those 18-month to 24-month cycles or not. Because if we go through our Dave histories, he generally 2 to 3 years on, 2 to 3 years off, 2 to 3 years on, two
Sure.
to three years off. And that was rooted in the, okay, I got to make some money. Okay, now I'm going to blow that money.
Right.
Now I'm
But
going
we
to
don't
go
have
make some money. And now I'm going to blow some money.
2 to 3 years on, 2 to 3 years off, and suddenly you're 85 years old. So there's not a lot of time to do that much longer. But here's something to think about, to talk about. I've been thinking about this more and more, is that these are two headlining shows,
Hmm.
not opening act, not opening gigs. So, like we saw last time we saw him do a full concert, if you did not, well, actually, this would have been, unless, because any of the corporate gigs, these have not been full concerts. So last time he
Yeah.
did a full concert was with the Kiss tour, which was about 45 minutes, Van Halen songs, and blew everybody's mind by pulling Big Train out. So
Yeah.
knowing that the set list is going to be 85% Van Halen, and he's got to do at least 75 minutes for a decent headlining set, what else are we going to hear?
I've heard some rumblings that they're rehearsing more. So it's not just the hits. It's not just the greatest hits. The Vegas 2021 set list was going to be Van Halen centric plus one or two solo hits, but deep cuts. But then again, when your whole catalog is the whole Van Halen catalog with Dave is what, 40 songs, 45 songs. There's
About
not a
that,
lot
yeah.
of deep cuts. you know, they're not going to do 1 foot. They're not going
One
to
foot
do
out the door. Yeah,
they're not going to do that. But Atomic Punk arguably is a deep cut, and that's still not such a deep cut.
right. As soon as I think of deep cuts, and of course it's Dave solo, I'm like, okay, what from the solo albums are we going to hear? I mean, I want to hear Just Like Paradise.
Yeah.
We know we're not going to hear. I guess I know no. I guess we're not going to hear. Um, what I'd love to hear "Going Crazy," let's say from Eat 'Em and Smile. I'd love
Yeah.
to hear "Little Lane Up." Think of it this way: the people who are there, who are going to go see Dave, there's a high percentage of them at M3 know his solo stuff.
I would conventionally, in normal logical living, say you're 100% right, and they will not get any of that. That would be my hunch because he can't naturally hit those high notes unless he's gone through vocal reconstructive surgery. He
Right.
took out Hot for Teacher, the Vegas shows and the Kiss shows. He wasn't doing Hot for Teacher. And
Hmm.
when you think about if you were to start singing Hot for Teacher right now, you go, oh, those are higher notes. And
Right.
then if you were to start singing Yankee Rose, you'd go, oh, that's also not
Yeah.
easy to sing at all. He kind of screwed himself with that, making some of his most identifiable songs hard to sing. Jump is really hard to sing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And how much can you tune down, right? I mean,
yeah, so I don't think that there's, and my I don't think is fairly informed, I have to say. I don't think, unfortunately, he's capable of singing everything. So you and I talk a lot about Cheap Trick. They come up in every episode. What I've heard, and tell me if you've heard this, Cheap Trick, the first two or three songs are the same every night. The last like three songs are the same every night. And then the middle of the show varies and they kind of call it right before they hit the stage.
actually, even that mixes up because I've seen, it used to be almost every set list opened up with Hello There, or sometimes
Yes.
Just Got Back. Last week they opened up with Dream Police.
Okay, so that's a new thing. But
So
the
they're
problem,
mixing it up, but there's a thing that most people don't realize, that Robin's son has been
Mhm.
playing the band now for about 3 years. He's an unbelievable musician, rhythm guitarist. Rick still Sometimes you can barely tell, but Rick's playing the leads. I've got my own issues of late, and I am a deep seated Cheap Trick fan. But
Yeah.
uh, Robin Jr. doubles Rob. He used to be. He doesn't just sing the choruses. He's singing every song with his dad. So there is a bit of a doubling there. And so sometimes you don't necessarily hear who Robin, who can still sing, by the way, but he's
Yeah.
not singing the way he did when he was 15 years ago, because he's now 72, 73, and that muscle is going to age no matter who you are, except for the guy who's up in Dorian Gray's attic, Glenn Hughes. And but you're not going to hear things, because you're not going to hear what could be missed notes or a lack of range on some stuff. Maybe on the Flame a bit, where there is that soul vocal spotlight on his, but he's still hitting about 70% of the notes. So,
Yeah.
but the problem is with Dave is that far too many people. I mean, the general reputation has been that he has not sounded good since 1984, which we know is not the case.
It's not
but
true.
That's why that
Yeah.
bar is so damn low, man.
So he's never been that kind of artist where the show changes night to night. The
Right.
banter, okay, so this is the
And to
look
be
at all
fair,
the.
most bands don't change a show. I mean, if you
Yeah.
saw Kiss on the End of the Road tour, at any given time, you were like, if you're a hardcore Kiss fan and you saw that show more than once, you were like, well, that was the same set list I saw 3 months ago.
In defense, not to be contrarian, they did change one song.
Yes, they
They
did.
did put like Crazy Crazy Nights into the encore, I think towards the end of it, or select shows. But otherwise, it was verbatim the same show because of lighting cues and
Right.
video, and allegedly Paul's vocals being pre-recorded.
I heard some of those things
Allegedly.
too. And then I just put my hands over my ears and went, no, 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 no.
But Dave's show is not that. Dave, there might be a camera on him for a live video thing, and there might be some lighting cues, but
There's no
he's totally
pyro.
there's no pyro.
Yeah.
And they're totally in a position where they could call out songs on the fly
They could
and
do
go.
audibles, is what you're saying.
They could entirely
And if
do
that
that.
band is that well rehearsed, and I would think though, there's going to be, let's say Dave walks into a place and it's an indoor show and that air conditioning is too fucked up for him. Well, guess what? We're taking out X song and now we're going to put this other song in. And that is determined at about 7:15 that night before before he steps on stage at 9:05, let's say. So, and that band is tight enough to do it because we know they're all pros, for goodness sakes.
They're all pros. If I go through who's in that band, like Al Estrada, I believe was plucked from a Van Halen tribute band, but in general was one of those guitar virtuosos that magazines were talking about years before all
Right.
that. Ryan Wheeler, you might just go, okay, so Michael Anthony's one of the easiest bass players of a major band to play the parts of, but Ryan can do fusion and jazz. Very complex player who cut his teeth in a lot of bands before that and played on Willow Smith's album, which that stuff has nothing to do with the Dave stuff. Francis has played in all sorts of bands. He filled in for Southside Johnny for stuff. That's a totally different kind of style where you could play a 3-hour show. The E Street Band style, you never quit. So I'm just saying these people are versatile, real musicians. I'm still actually not sure if there's going to be a keyboard player or second guitarist. I don't think so. I think last I heard was the band was those 3 people.
Right. Yeah. So that was my next thing, was who's in the band, but that's probably a good bet to make.
Yeah. So I'm going into the show going, I don't expect it to be a set list that is anything surprising because there's not that much material. I don't expect the greatest performances. I just am going to go, I'm celebrating this guy while I still can.
That's it. Yep.
That's the
As
attitude.
critical as we can be here, and we often can be, but it's only because we have such passion. We are such fans, not fanboys. But the truth is, who wants Dave to win and look fantastic more than us? Nobody.
Right. And he would drop us with a punch, as that troll said.
Or a kick.
Yeah, we say negative stuff because we're trying to be constructive to go, dude, you should be making a lot more money doing even less work and keeping us happy all these years later. There's no reason Vince Neil should have more money than David Lee Roth.
Right. Right. Which
There,
I hopefully I don't think that's the case, but good Lord, you never know.
yeah, there's no reason for any of that. There's no reason that more people should be wearing Motley Crue shirts than Van Halen shirts, et cetera, et cetera. And it's obviously too late to change any of that. And history's rewritten itself that Guns N' Roses and Motley Crue and all those bands were so much bigger than Van Halen.
Okay, before we get out of here, you just reminded me about something because the word legacy popped in my head as we've talked about
Yeah,
often here, and what you were just alluding to, the legacy could be different. And you know how the legacy very quickly could have been, and just the overall coolness factor and kind of answer a lot of questions, how that could have been instantly wrapped up the past 2 weeks.
sure.
Show up on John Mulaney show, which the second season
Yes.
just premiered.
Well, related to that, did you see John Mulaney's appearance on Jimmy Kimmel,
Yes.
where they talked about their inside sharing of Gene Simmons jokes along with Nick Kroll?
Yes, and they've got a David Lee Roth text thread, which I would kill to be on.
There's that one. Then supposedly Bill Hader and Fred Armisen have one. They were talking about sharing the Alex Van Halen. If I see him, he better be wearing a cup, that thing. And so it makes you think some of the biggest comedic actors of the last 30 years in the States at least love your band and or have tried to employ you. And you're
Well,
doing what with
we
that?
this is so infuriating to me because there was that piece that came out a couple of weeks ago with the premiere of the second season. I think this week will be, I think, the third episode of Mulaney's show, right?
Yeah.
And for those who don't know, it's live, it's Netflix, it's live, it's a talk show with a myriad of disparate and different guests all around. The overarching theme is really it's a love letter to LA, essentially. At least the first season was, and the second season is still in LA, and
Hmm.
topics are, can be, they could do some LA centric things. And who's more LA centric than Dave? And I
Yeah.
mean, my goodness. And didn't Mulaney say you want him to be a co-host in the beginning?
Mulaney was asked in another interview about that, and he said, I pitched him multiple ideas and he turned them all down, including being the band leader.
Just, it would have been
And
so cool.
my theory back then was, is it because he didn't want to be on camera without the control of what he would look like and his imaging? Because I don't, when's the last time he was on camera? Joe Rogan, the second Joe Rogan appearance?
The little airport news piece when he came back from Mexico.
Okay, yeah. So when they caught him in LAX, that Fox News and the paparazzi person had him, that wasn't an on purpose sighting. But the last time that he intentionally, because these corporate gigs were not intentionally filmed, they thought that there was going to be no video. So the last time he was intentionally dressed was either Rogan or that VMA's 2021 thing where
Right.
he presented and was on the red carpet, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So he's kept himself attempting to not be filmed. I think that there's something with that.
Well, there'll be no hiding it, I suppose, on stage, chatting and rapping and singing, unless it's none of those things and it's just the songs and that's it. But here's the thing:
Yeah.
he's backstage at these things with Sebastian Bach. I mean, what are we saying here? That he can't necessarily hold a conversation for more than 30 seconds?
Oh, I'm not saying that for any reason or on any level. I'm saying that Dave likes control because he knows better than everybody else. Whether or not he actually does, he knows better than everybody else. And I have to assume there's a fear of, well, if I do this thing, it's not my script, it's not my lighting, it's not my choices, it's not my schedule.
There's such a lack of trust there, man, because one, there's a bunch of things you can work out in the
Wait,
negotiations
wait,
for
wait.
it.
My lack of trust about him or
No. Dave's lack of trust there, right? And number one, there's a bunch of things that you would negotiate. Let's say you're
yeah.
negotiating a be appearance on on John Mulaney's thing. So there's some things you're going to be negotiating, but clearly this is I mean, it's a labor of love on Mulaney's part. This isn't
It's a big paycheck. It's a
no,
big
but
paycheck.
no. What I'm saying is his impetus for wanting to have Dave come on
Yes.
isn't a sandbagger. That's not who he is. That's not who Mulaney is. It's not, I mean,
No.
it's not about making fun or poking fun or making, no, the guy loves Dave and would love to have him be a part of this. And I mean, somewhere there's no management to go, just like in his recording days, there was no A&R presence. There's no management to go, hey man, I took these meetings with Mulaney's producers and Mulaney, come with me next week. You're going to meet with them. This is really, really cool. And here's why this could be really beneficial for you. And if Dave goes, well, fuck it, I don't want to do it. I don't feel like doing anything. I'm going to go back and draw, whatever, fine, whatever. But if you're actively out there looking, and maybe he's not, but he is doing gigs. If you're looking to do something, think a little longer range. You go, man, this is really cool for my legacy. It's hip. It's somebody younger. Mulaney's in his 40s. He knows who Dave is, for God's sakes. This to me is the sort of thing. Here's the deal. Would Sammy Hagar turn that down?
Not only would he not turn down, but to go with what you're saying, just to show that I understand it. It was like when Eddie Murphy put Red Fox in that movie.
Right.
And Red Fox, his career, like, yeah, people knew who he was, but
they knew him from Sanford and Son.
But that was old.
Right, exactly. They know Dave from Van Halen. Right, exactly.
But the top comedian and rising movie star of the moment goes, I want to put you in a movie. I want to pay you more than you've been paid, get you out of debt, and help you out here. And he gave Red Fox $1 million for that movie, which nobody wanted to see. And then supposedly he didn't pay it, so then he was in more IRS trouble or something like that. But the key was I'm throwing you a life preserver so that future generations know who you are and what you are. That was your chance.
That's a great teaser and a great preview for what maybe our next episode will be. I've got this all planned out, man. What should have been and what could be.
I'm looking forward to that episode. It will have to be preempted if Dave announces 20 more shows, puts out 3 more dance videos, and 2 more live tracks. Otherwise, they're going to get this long-awaited Chinese democracy style delayed episode.
Yeah, Dave's throwing the shoes back into a tour bus, and there's going to be a 30-day tour.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. Thank you to anybody who's still listening. Thank you to Steve for his patience. And if you're coming to M3, please let me know. Happy to meet you there.
Cheers.